Let me tell you something. In 26 years of working a flight line, I have heard a lot of sounds. Engines that scream. Engines that cough. Engines that just quit clean like somebody flipping off a light switch. But I never heard a whole base go quiet the way it did that morning. Not silent like everyone stopped talking. Silent like the air itself stopped breathing. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name doesn't matter much for this. People on base just called me Chief. I ran the ground crew for the trainer squadron out at Halden Field, which is a flat, dusty stretch of nothing about 40 minutes from the nearest real town. If you've never seen a training base at dawn, picture this. Long gray runways. Hangars the color of old dishwater. The smell of jet fuel that gets into your clothes and never really leaves. And the cold. Mornings out, they were cold enough to make your knuckles ache before the sun came up. We trained young pilots. Cadets mostly. Kids who were too young to rent a car but somehow old enough to be trusted with a machine that could go faster than a bullet from a rifle. That always struck me as funny and a little terrifying. That's where I first met her. Mara Vance, 19 years old. She showed up at the start of the spring intake, and honestly I didn't think much of her at first. Small thing, maybe 5'4" with her boots on. Hair always pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. She had this habit of standing very still when older officers talked, like she was afraid if she moved she'd be sent home. A lot of the cadets had swagger. They walked around like the sky already belonged to them. Mara didn't. She walked like she was borrowing it and didn't want to scratch anything. But here's the thing I noticed about her, and I noticed it early. She liked the planes. Not the flying, I mean the planes, the machines, the grease and the bolts and the smell. Most cadets, when they finished a flight, they'd hand the jet back to us like it was a rental car. Couldn't get away from it fast enough. They wanted the glory part, the flying part, the cool part. They didn't care about the 1,000 little things that kept them alive up there. Mara cared. She'd come out early before her training slot, and she'd stand near our work area with a coffee she clearly didn't like. She made a face every time she sipped it, and she'd just watch us work. First couple times I figured she was lost. Third time I asked her what she wanted. She got all flustered, said, "Sorry, Chief, I want to understand how it works, the whole thing, not just the cockpit part." I remember I laughed at her. Not mean, just surprised. "You want to understand how it works," I said. "Kid, I don't fully understand how it works. There's engineers with gray hair and no hair who don't understand how it works." And she got this little stubborn line in her jaw, and she said, "Then I want to understand it more than I do today." I didn't have an answer to that. So I let her hang around. Other cadets gave her grief for it. Called her teacher's pet, called her a few uglier things I won't repeat. There were boys in that intake who couldn't stand the idea of a girl knowing the machine better than they did. And she did know it better. By week 3, she could name half the systems on that trainer jet. By week 6, she was catching things even some of my younger crew missed. I'll tell you the moment I started actually respecting her. It was a Tuesday. Gray sky, low clouds, the kind of day where flying feels like a bad idea before you even start. One of the senior cadets, a tall kid named Brower who thought a lot of himself, was about to take a jet up. Mara was on the line, walking past, and she stopped. Just stopped. And she stared at the underside of the left wing for a second. Then she said, quiet, "Chief, is that supposed to look like that?" I looked, and I'll be honest with you, my stomach dropped. There was a fuel weep, a small one, a little dark stain seeping where it shouldn't have been. The kind of thing that, on a bad day in the wrong conditions, turns into a very big problem at 10,000 feet. We'd missed it. I'd missed it. And this 19-year-old kid walking by with her bad coffee caught it. We grounded the jet. Brower was furious. He wanted his flight time, and he wasn't shy about it. He stood there red in the face, yelling that nothing was wrong and she just wanted attention. Mara didn't yell back. She just looked at him and said, "Real even, I'd rather you be mad at me down here than dead up there." Nobody said anything after that. That was Mara. She didn't need to win the argument. She just needed everybody to land in one piece. I should have known, looking back. I should have known a kid like that would be the one. The universe has a sense of humor like that. It always seems to test the ones who care the most. But that morning, the cold morning when it all happened, none of us knew yet. We were just doing our jobs. The sun was barely up. The line was busy, coffee was bad, knuckles ached. And Mara Vance climbed into a trainer jet for a solo flight she'd done a dozen times before. She gave me a thumbs up through the canopy, same as always. I gave her one back. I keep thinking about that thumbs up. There's a thing they teach you on a flight line, and it's the most boring, most important thing in the world. Routine keeps you alive. You do the same checks the same way every time, even when it's cold, even when you're tired, even when you've done it 1,000 times. Because the one time you skip a step is the one time it bites you. That morning everything was routine. That's what makes it stick in my head so bad. There was no warning, no bad feeling, no dark cloud, nothing. It was actually a beautiful morning once the sun got up over the ridge. The kind of cold, clear blue you only get out in the flatlands. You could see for miles. The runway shone. The frost was burning off the grass in little curls of steam. Mara's slot was an early one. A solo, basic flight pattern, a few maneuvers, nothing fancy. She'd been signed off for solos for weeks. Her instructor, a hard old bird named Captain Ruiz, trusted her more than he trusted most. And Ruiz didn't trust easy. I remember I helped her strap in. She always double-checked her own harness even after we checked it. That morning she tugged the straps, nodded to herself, then looked up at me. "Cold one, Chief," she said. "Cold one," I agreed. "Coffee was extra bad today." "It's always bad, you just keep drinking it." She grinned at that, real grin. Then the canopy came down and she was in her own world. Goggles, gloves, the whole rig. She looked older with the helmet on. She always did, like the kid disappeared and the pilot showed up. The jet rolled out, taxied, lined up. And then it was off the ground, clean and easy, climbing into all that blue. I went back to work. We had 3 more jets to turn around that morning and no time to stand around watching. I had a young crew member, Tamaz, fussing with a panel that wouldn't seat right, and I went over to help him. That's what I was doing, kneeling on cold concrete, swearing at a panel when it started. The first sign wasn't a sound, it was a feeling. You spend enough years near aircraft, you develop a sense. Not magic, nothing like that. Just your ears get trained without you knowing it. And something in the sound of Mara's engine, far off and high up, changed. I lifted my head. Tamaz kept talking. I held up a hand. Quiet. The engine note was wrong. It's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't lived around these machines. A healthy jet engine has a steadiness to it, a confidence. What I heard was a kind of stumble, a hitch, like a runner who clips their foot on a step and almost catches it but not quite. Then it cut out. For 1 full second, and I will swear to this for the rest of my life, there was absolute silence in the sky. A trainer jet with a dead engine doesn't drop like a rock. It glides, but it glides like a brick with good intentions. Mara was up there, alone, 19 years old, in a machine that had just stopped doing the one thing that kept her alive. I was on my feet without remembering standing up. So was half the line. Heads came up all across the field, one after another, like a wind moving through grass. Everybody heard it. Everybody knew what it meant. I ran for the radio in the line shack. My legs felt like they belonged to somebody else. Inside, I could already hear the tower trying to raise her. "Sparrow Tower, say status." That was her call sign. Sparrow. Little bird. Somebody'd given it to her as a joke when she first arrived because she was small and quiet. The joke didn't feel funny anymore. There was a crackle, and then her voice. I'll never forget how she sounded. Not panicked, not screaming. Tight, yes, Fast, yes, but under control. Like she'd been waiting her whole life for the worst thing to happen and had decided in advance that she would not fall apart. Tower Sparrow, engine failure, I have engine failure, attempting restart. The line shack went dead quiet. The whole base, I'd learn later, went quiet at almost the same moment, like a held breath. Crews stopped working. Mechanics stood up out of engine bays. Pilots came out of the ready room. The mess hall, the offices, the towers. Word travels fast on a base, faster than radio, and the word that morning was Sparrow's in trouble. Captain Ruiz, her instructor, came through the door of the shack so fast he nearly took it off the hinges. He grabbed a headset. His face was the color of old paper. "Sparrow, this is Ruiz. I'm right here. Talk to me. Where are you? What's your altitude?" A pause, static. Then her voice again, a little thinner now. "Captain, I restarts not catching. I tried twice. Altitude's bleeding off. I'm at." She gave a number. I won't repeat it because I'm not sure I remember it right, and I won't lie to you about the parts I'm sure of. But I remember the feeling of that number landing in the room. It was low, lower than it should have been, lower than gave a person much time to think. Ruiz closed his eyes for half a second, just half a second. Then he opened them and he was steady as a stone. "Okay, Sparrow, okay. You did the restarts, that's done. We move on, you hear me? We move on. Look outside. Tell me what you see for landing." And here is the thing about Mara Vance that I didn't fully understand until that morning. All those hours she'd spent on my flight line, all that bad coffee, all those questions nobody else bothered to ask, standing there watching us work, learning the machine, learning every system, learning what could go wrong and why. She wasn't just curious. She was getting ready. She didn't know for what. None of us ever do. But when the worst thing came, it found a girl who had spent every spare hour preparing for exactly this, even when she didn't know that's what she was doing. The little bird wasn't so little after all. I want you to understand what it's like to listen to something terrible and not be able to do a single thing about it. I've got tools for everything, wrenches for engines, procedures for fires, a whole shack full of parts and gauges and knowledge. And there was a kid up in the sky in a dying machine, and not one thing in that shack could help her. The only thing that could help her was her own 2 hands and her own clear head. Everything else was up to gravity. So we did the only thing we could. We listened, and we prayed in whatever way each of us prayed. The tower had cleared everything. Every other aircraft was waved off, told to hold or divert. The whole sky belonged to Sparrow now. The longest runway was hers if she could only reach it. That was the problem, if she could reach it. Ruiz was walking her through it. His voice never once cracked. I've thought about that a lot since. Here was a man who clearly cared about this kid like she was his own, listening to her maybe die, and he kept his voice as flat and warm as a man reading a recipe. Because he knew. He knew that if his voice broke, hers might too. So he held it together for both of them. "Sparrow, you're going to glide her in. You've practiced this. We do it in the sim all the time. This is just the sim with better scenery." A laugh came over the radio, a real one, short and shaky. "Better scenery, copy that. There you go. Now you're high or low for the field. Talk me through it." A pause, the sound of her thinking. I could picture her face under the helmet, eyes flicking across the runway, the gauges, the horizon, doing the math that no 19-year-old should have to do with her own life as the answer. "I'm high, Captain. I think I'm a little high. I've got the field. I can see it. But I'm coming in hot and high, and I'm not sure I can bleed it off in time. Now, I need to explain something, because this is the part where my heart climbed up into my throat and stayed there. Coming in high and fast in a dead jet is its own kind of trap. You think being high is good, more room, more options, but you can't add power to fix a mistake. You've got one glide and one glide only. Coming too high and fast and you float right past the runway and run out of ground. Coming too low and slow and you drop short into the dirt. There's a window, a narrow one. And she had to thread it perfectly first try, no second chances, with the whole world holding its breath. Most pilots her age, most pilots any age, would have locked up, just frozen on the controls and ridden it into the ground. Ruiz's voice came again. Okay, you're high, that's a problem we can fix. High is fixable. You remember the S-turns we talked about. You're going to use the turns to wash off altitude. Don't dive, you build speed. You make it worse. Use the turns, be patient. You've got more time than your body's telling you. Copy S-turns. And then, over the radio, in a small voice that broke every heart in that shack. Captain, if this doesn't. Stop, Ruiz cut her off instant, hard. Stop right there, you don't get to talk like that. You fly the airplane, that is the only job you have. You fly it all the way down to the last inch. You hear me? You don't stop flying it until it stops needing to be flown. Silence, static. Then, yes, Captain, flying the airplane. I looked around that shack. Grown men, tough men, men who'd seen ugly things in their lives, and there wasn't a dry eye among us. Tamaz had his fist pressed against his mouth. One of the old mechanics was just whispering over and over, come on kid, come on kid, come on. Outside, the whole base had gathered along the line and at the fences, anywhere they could see the approach end of that long runway. Hundreds of people, cadets, officers, cooks, clerks, mechanics, and not one of them was talking. I told you at the start about the silence. This was it. This was the moment. A base of hundreds of people, and you could have heard a coin drop on the concrete. Every face turned to the same patch of sky. And then somebody pointed. A little dark shape against the blue, far out past the end of the runway. Coming down, banking left then right. S-turns, just like Ruiz said. Washing off the height foot by foot, the way she'd practiced, the way she'd studied, the way she'd prepared for without ever knowing why. I ran outside. I couldn't sit in that shack anymore. I had to see it with my own eyes. The jet was lower now, lining up, wings rocking slightly as she fought to keep it steady with no engine, no power, nothing but air and skill and nerve. The fire trucks were already rolling, lights flashing, racing alongside the runway. The crash crews, the medics, everybody braced for the worst. And the little bird came down out of the sky. She was still high. I could see it. Everybody who knew anything could see it. She was floating, eating up runway, the precious concrete sliding away under her with nowhere left to go. A groan went through the crowd, low, helpless. She was going to overshoot. She was going to run out of runway. And then she did something I have never seen a cadet do, and have rarely seen anyone do. I have replayed those last 10 seconds in my head more times than I can count. In the years since, I have described it to a lot of people, and I always run out of words at the same spot. Because what she did was the kind of thing they don't teach. It was beyond the procedure. It was the thing that lives past the checklist, the thing that only shows up when a person has decided, somewhere deep down, that they are going to live. She was high and fast and floating long. The runway was vanishing under her. In maybe 4 or 5 seconds she'd be past the usable concrete with no engine to go around. There was nothing but rough ground and a perimeter fence past that. People were already turning away, the way you do when you can't bear to watch. And Mara, 19 years old, alone, with a dead machine and the whole world watching, sideslipped it. I don't know if that means anything to you. Let me try to explain it like a person and not a manual. A sideslip is an ugly, deliberate, controlled way of throwing your airplane partly sideways into the wind so that it falls faster without speeding up. You cross the controls stick one way, rudder the other, and the airplane sort of skids down through the air like a kid sliding sideways down a hill. It's uncomfortable. It feels wrong. It takes nerve to do it close to the ground because if you get it wrong, you've just made everything worse at the worst possible second. It's an old trick. Bush pilots use it. Glider pilots use it. It's the kind of thing you only really know if you've gone out of your way to learn the machine past what the syllabus asks of you. The kind of thing a girl might learn standing on a cold flight line at dawn, asking a tired old chief 1,000 questions over bad coffee. She slipped it hard. The jet dropped, dropped. The nose canted off to the side, the whole thing skidding down out of the sky, and the crowd made a sound I can't describe. Half gasp, half cry. It looked, for one horrible instant, like a crash starting. And then, at the last possible heartbeat, she straightened it. Kicked it level, wings flat, nose forward, right over the numbers. And she put it down. Not pretty. I won't pretend it was pretty. The wheels hit and chirped and the jet bounced once, just a little, and then settled, and then she was on the ground, rolling hard on the brakes, the truck screaming alongside her, the end of the runway coming up fast but not fast enough this time because she'd bought herself the room. With that slip. With that one wild, brilliant, perfectly judged thing she did when she had no power and no time and no second chances. The jet rolled out, slowed, stopped. Maybe 200 feet of runway left, maybe less. She'd made it. For a second nobody moved. The whole base just stood there, staring, like we couldn't believe what our own eyes had shown us. Then the silence broke. I have never heard a sound like the one that came out of those hundreds of people. It wasn't a cheer exactly. It was bigger than a cheer. It came up out of everybody at once. This huge, ragged roar, men and women shouting and crying and grabbing each other, hats flying, people just losing it completely. The dam broke. All that held breath came out at once. I was running, we all were. The whole crowd surged toward the jet, the crash crews waving people back, the fire trucks pulling up. The canopy came up. And there she was. She had her helmet off. Her hair, that always too tight hair, had come loose and was stuck to her face with sweat. She was shaking, both hands just shaking on the edge of the cockpit. She looked very, very young all of a sudden, younger than 19, like a kid again. Ruiz got there first. He'd run from the shack, and the man had to be 3 times her age, and he beat us all. He grabbed the side of the cockpit and he looked up at her, and for a second neither of them said anything. Then she said in this tiny cracking voice, Captain, did I bring it back okay?" And this hard old man, this stone, this captain who'd kept his voice perfectly flat for 2 of the longest minutes in history. He just put his hand over his face, and his shoulders started to shake. "Yeah, kid," he managed. "Yeah, you brought it back okay." The fuss after a thing like that is enormous, and it's also completely beside the point. There were investigations, of course. Teams came out. They tore that engine down to the last bolt. Turned out it was a failure deep inside, the kind of thing nobody could have caught on a walk-around. The kind of thing that just happens sometimes, blameless and terrible. It wasn't her fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was just the machine choosing the worst possible morning to break. What mattered, what everyone kept coming back to, was that a 19-year-old cadet had taken a dead jet and glided it down out of a clear sky and put it on the runway with her own 2 hands. No panic, no freezing, just clear thinking and steady nerve and a slip-on final that veteran pilots talked about for years afterward. They gave her a commendation. There was a ceremony. She stood up straight in front of everybody and went red in the face the whole time because she hated the attention. Same as always, the little stubborn line in her jaw. But that's not the part I remember. The part I remember happened a few days after all the cameras and the official people had gone, after the noise died down. It was early, cold again. I was out on the line before my shift, the way I always am, and the field was empty and gray and quiet, and there she was. Standing in the same spot she always stood, with a coffee she clearly still didn't like, making the same face when she sipped it, watching us get ready for the day. I walked over. We stood there a while, didn't say much at first. That's how it is with people who have been through something together. You don't need to fill it up with words. Finally I said, "You don't have to come out here anymore, you know. You proved your point. You proved everybody's point." She looked out at the runway, the same one. You could still see the marks where she'd come down. "I'm not out here to prove anything, Chief," she said. "I never was." "Then why?" She thought about it, took another sip, made the face. "Because the more I understand it," she said, "the less it scares me. And the less it scares me, the better I can take care of it." She glanced at me. "And the better I take care of it, the better it takes care of me. That's the deal, right? That was always the deal." I didn't have an answer for that, same as the first day. I think about her a lot even now, all these years later. I've trained hundreds of kids since. Watched them come and go, watched them get their wings, watched some of them do great things. But I never met another one like her. Not because she was the bravest, though she was brave. Not because she was the best stick, though she was good. But because she understood something most people go their whole lives never understanding. That the boring stuff, the studying, the questions nobody else asks, the cold mornings, the bad coffee, the work you do when no one's watching and no one's giving you credit, that's not separate from the big dramatic moment. That is the big dramatic moment, just spread out across 1,000 ordinary days. Mara Vance saved her own life that morning, but she didn't save it that morning. She saved it on all the mornings before it, one question at a time, while everybody else thought she was just a quiet kid hanging around the flight line for no reason. The day her jet failed, every voice on base went silent. But hers didn't. Hers was the one voice still talking, calm and clear, flying the airplane all the way down to the last inch. Because somewhere along the line, on a cold gray morning none of us even remembered, she'd already decided she would. And that, I think, is the whole thing. That's everything I know about courage, learned from a 19-year-old kid who liked engines. The bravest people aren't the ones who aren't afraid. They're the ones who did the quiet work, long before anyone was watching, so that when the silence came, they were the only ones still ready to speak.